Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot from people is, do I ever regret selling my games, or are there games that I regret selling the most? And every time I get asked this question, I do stop to think about it, and my answer is always the same, and that's no, I don't regret selling any of my games. But when I sat down to make this video, I remembered some things that I actually do deeply regret getting rid of, and one of the examples is a lot of my games in my collection are very sentimental to me. Even if it's a game that I feel like I may never play again, some of them can be very hard for me to get rid of because I get such an attachment to these games, especially if I can remember vividly the memory that is tied to acquiring or playing these games. For example, when my grandfather passed away, he was actually quite into playing video games. Some of his favorite series were Doom, Tomb Raider, Wolfenstein, Tomb Raider, he Medal of Honor. He was a World War II veteran, and you know it kind of reflected in the games he liked to play. And I remember when he did pass away, I inherited his collection, and it was a lot of games that even if I didn't play myself, I had a lot of fond memories watching him play. I'd come over and we'd play games together, like maybe we'd play something like Golden Axe 2, or I'd watch him play Tomb Raider because he was actually way better at it than me, let me tell you. So when he did eventually pass and I inherited this collection, I it actually ended up that some of the games I did have duplicates of. Obviously, over the years, I would pick these games up myself somewhere along the lines, and when I got his, suddenly I have duplicates, and I wasn't careful in making sure that these two collections didn't mishmash together, like if I'm putting games in a bin or sorting my collection. And I remember when it came time when I was like, okay, time to get rid of some of my duplicates, time to get rid of some of my doubles, because why would I need two copies of the same game? I was like, oh shoot, which one of these is from my grandfather's collection? Because I would much rather prefer to hold on to that. So I had to sell some of these games off, not knowing if it was my original copy or my grandfather's copy. And it always bugged me that I didn't take better care of that. And because I'm losing essentially the memories, I would much rather have the versions that I was really young playing and watching rather than ones that I picked up on my own. And the one that's probably bugged me the most is my dad's original ColecoVision that he passed down to me. It was his when he was younger, and that's what I grew up playing. That was my first game console. And I remember when I first got into game collecting, it was a bit beat up, right? Like this thing was it's seen its days for sure. It was pretty used. And I remember I came into a second ColecoVision that was nice, brand new in the box at a yard sale. And I remember one time I was just looking to sell excess stuff from my collection on eBay back when eBay was like, 20 plus years old. And I sold my original ColecoVision, and I'm like, well, I would rather have the brand spanking new one, right? Like, who wants the old dusty beat up one? And man, have I regretted that ever since, because that was my original game console. That was my dad's, and because I was fresh and new and getting into game collecting and young, I was it was not a good choice. I wish I had that old, dirty, dusty labels like peeling off of it. ColecoVision instead of this nice mint condition one was in the box, barely touched. So those kind of instances, yeah, I deeply regret getting rid of those games, and it's a reason why I have a really hard time getting rid of certain games that have I have a very close personal connection to. Whether it's a game that I used to play with my friends when I was younger, maybe I don't see those friends anymore, so it holds those memories. But then when it comes to other stuff, like I'm sure you saw my thumbnail here, it's not clickbait. Those are games that I sold and traded. For example, Panzer Dragoon Saga. It's something, for those of you that remember my old YouTube videos, you may recall a really old video where I traded my copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga for something that wasn't even a video game, but it's an amazing memory, and it takes me back to the old days of YouTube and the YouTube community. I traded my copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga for this little handmade Sackboy Eco plush. You could see it's got a lot of work on it. It was modeled after Sackboy from Little Big Planet. He's got the poncho. I mean, this thing is really nice and detailed. And I actually traded this with somebody on YouTube. She went by Golden Jelly Bean, I believe was the name. And I remember she made one on her YouTube channel, and I was like, whoa, you guys know I love Eco. It's my favorite game of all time. And around that time, I was a really big fan of Little Big Planet as well. So it was like a match made in heaven for me to see this Eco plush. And I remember writing her, and I'm like, please, can I buy this? Can you make one of these and I'll buy it off of you? And she set up a trade, and she was very smart about it. Let me tell you, this is probably one of the smartest trades I've ever had with the person, obviously getting a pretty good deal. She wanted a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga. Now, around that time, Panzer Dragoon Saga was about a $120, $150 game. and I traded her my copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga because guess what? This probably took her many hours worth of work. This thing has a lot of crochet work in it, and to me, it was worth the trade. Do I regret getting rid of that copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga? No, because it created a lasting memory where I still have my Eco Sackboy plush. I have that memory of old school YouTube days, an interaction with an older member in the YouTube community that I haven't been in contact with for many years, but I still own and love and appreciate that Sackboy, and I'll never forget it. So to me, getting rid of Panzer Dragoon Saga was well worth the memories that that created with the Sackboy that I received. Of course, I did eventually, get a second copy of Panzer Dragoon because around that time they were rare, but they're not as crazy as they are now. Another one, of course, Gotcha Force. This is a game that I had in my collection for the GameCube. I'm gonna be honest, I can't even remember how I acquired that game. It might have came in a lot. Maybe I bought it on eBay around the time when I bought it. It was probably like $60, $70. I don't know. But I remember somebody reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, uh, I'm looking to buy Gotcha Force," and I think I worked out the trade to be something around the realms of like 100, $110. I actually gave them a break because I knew them. So Ryan, if you're listening to this, shout out to you. You definitely got a good deal on that. But do I regret getting rid of Gotcha Force for like $100 when that game? I mean, geez, I haven't checked recently, but that game is worth at least 5+ times the amount of that now. And honestly, I don't because I didn't have an attachment to Gotcha Force. I hadn't even played the game yet. And for me, getting rid of a game before I even play it that's probably the easiest way for me to detach myself from a game. And I think this is a really important mindset for people to get into too, where I think it's very unhealthy to be in this hobby of collecting video games and be in a mindset where you can just never let go of things, where you have to keep everything. Sometimes you do have to make a hard decision and be like, all right, it's time to let go of this. For me, yeah, it can be really hard to let go of some games, especially if it's a game that I know it was really hard for me to acquire, if I don't have any doubles of it. But if I really look at it and I'm like, I'm really not into these kind of games anymore, I'd rather just get rid of it and get something else. Pass it off to somebody that can play and appreciate it. And of course, it's hard to get to that point where you can just let go of anything and everything in your collection. But I think it is important to take steps to kind of at least be able to let some stuff go. Because for me, when I go to a game convention and I bring some of my games, whether it's a double or not a double, I love the interaction. I One of the reasons I loved going to game conventions to get rid of my doubles and stuff is because I love meeting everybody. If you've ever been to a convention that I was had a booth at and selling games, I'm sure you know that I will take the time to have a great conversation with you, hook you up with a deal, give you some great recommendations, and even the strangers that come up and I don't know, they don't know who I am, I don't know who they are. I just love recommending games to people, even if it's a game I haven't played. If I'm familiar with it, it feels so good to let go of those games and give them to somebody that you know is going to appreciate it. And that's one of the main reasons that I actually like letting go of games. Is I remember these chats that I have with people. Hey, we got downtime at the convention. It's like the end of the day on a Sunday or something, and there's a lull period, hey, come on over, let's chat about games for 20 minutes and maybe I'll hook you up with a deal kind of thing. I wish I was able to sell more. I'm not like a reseller or anything. It's just that over like COVID, I acquired so many doubles from buying lots on Mercari and eBay and everything. And it's gotten to the point now where I can't do conventions anymore because I don't have like the inventory for that kind of stuff anymore. So I do kind of miss it. I have to say, it makes me want to buy more lots so I can accrue a bunch of doubles and games I don't need so that I can start selling at conventions again. Cause man, I love meeting people and chatting games. It's always been one of the highlights for me is getting to meet people that are just as passionate about my games as, uh, as I was about them. So if you're one of those kind of people where you struggle to let go of anything, try it. Really try it. Just let go of some games to some friends. I think that's the best way to go about it first is don't just sell it randomly online. Maybe you have an inner circle, a group that you're a part of on a Facebook marketplace or Discord or some kind of community on YouTube or whatever you're part of. Either trade the games to them or sell them to them because then at least you feel like your games are going to somebody that you know and will love and appreciate them, and they're not just going to someone on eBay that's going to buy your games and flip them and resell them anyway, which has happened to me in recent times. I tried selling some stuff and resellers were just buying my stuff to resell it, and that yeah, it's being repurposed out into other people's collections, but man, it does feel bad knowing that when you sell a game, it's not going to somebody that's buying it on purpose for their collection. It's just kind of a something you got to deal with in this collecting space. But yeah, I didn't want to ramble on too long, but I wanted to kind of just talk about it, right? Like it's one of the things in this hobby that is one of the hardest things to get used to, is that, sometimes letting go of something is not easy. And I think it's really important not to have any regrets, because even if you sell something and you get money for it, maybe you use that money to acquire even more games that were cheap back then and now they're more expensive now. So maybe it's best to look at it that way. You didn't waste your money, right? Like, you didn't sell it and get next to nothing for it, because the money that you got then, you probably bought games that are pricey now. But it's not just about the price, right? Like I said, it's about those memories. And as long as you can sell a game and create a great memory with it, I'd encourage you to get out to conventions, buy a little table, right? Like, buy a little table that they charge you 50 or $100 for the 1 day or the 2 days that the convention's doing, and just bring a few bins of games, right? And just, maybe it's like paying for the experience. You don't have to, don't be intimidated by the people there that have giant booths and are selling tons of games. Just bring a couple of boxes, couple of bins, and the money that you pay for the table, maybe you just barely break even. Maybe you only make $200 or $300, and you're like, that wasn't worth the gas, that wasn't worth the time. But it's probably worth the people that you met and the conversations you had and the memories that you created, right? It's something worth trying. And once you let go of those first few games, I really feel like it's gonna almost reinvigorate your desire to collect and stay in the hobby. So if you're struggling with staying motivated in collecting, because yes, things are getting expensive, things are getting kind of like, it's getting rough, right, to collect retro video games. If you've never tried this before, try it out. I think it could really help some of you, maybe if you're going through a rut with how depressing it can be looking at the prices of retro games. Really quick shout out as well. I just wanted to thank all of my channel members. Here's a list of all of them for all the tiers. Special shout outs to ChronoLink91, great friend of mine, someone that I have had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times over the years as well. Great member of the community. Chrono, thank you for being a diamond doorknob in my membership, and I'll see you guys in the next video.